The Archangel, Satan, and a Prophet's Corpse. Sounds like an H.P. Lovecraft murder mystery. In the Book of Deuteronomy, we're told the prophet Moses dies before entering the Promised Land. Then Moses climbed Mount Nebo from the plains of Moab to the top of Pisgah across from Jericho. There the Lord showed him the whole land, from Gilead to Dan, all of Naphtali, the territory of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the Mediterranean Sea, the Negev and the whole region from the valley of Jericho, the city of palms as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to him, "This is the land I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, when I said, I will give it to your descendants. I have let you see it with your eyes, but you will not cross over into it." And Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in Moab, as the Lord had said. He buried him in Moab, in the valley opposite Beth Peor, but to this day no one knows where his grave is. It's kind of a crappy ending for a guy who devoted his life to trying to serve God in a people group that was at times more unwieldy than a classroom of kids with ADHD. But that's what happened, and for most people, that was enough. Right up until we get to the New Testament. In the Epistle of Jude, we read, "But when the Archangel Michael, contending with the devil, was disputing about the body of Moses, he did not presume to pronounce a blasphemous judgment, but said, 'The Lord rebuke you.'" Inevitably, as all humans do, the question then became, why? Why would Michael and Hillel fight over the dead body of a prophet? Hillel, by the way, is the more accurate pronunciation of Satan's name if Isaiah's rebuke to the Babylonian king has a dual meaning. But the question stands, why the cosmic brawl? And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do that right now. The Assumption of Moses is an extra-biblical piece of literature that, as far as I can tell, is incomplete. What we have is a 6th century Latin manuscript that's mostly intact, and I say mostly intact because church fathers like Origen in the 3rd century mention the Michael-Satan fight as being part of the Assumption of Moses' text. The trouble is, it appears to be missing from what we have. The thinking is Jude referenced this deuterocanonical writing to an audience who was familiar with it to help illustrate the point she was trying to make. Unfortunately, we don't really know what was written for this part of the text, so the narrative and reasoning is something that's been pieced together by tradition and some creative thinking. The basic premise is Michael was sent to bury Moses after his death and ended up getting into an argument when Satan tried to intervene. And right here is where this part of the story falls off the rails. Let's look at that text from Deuteronomy again. It says, "And Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in Moab, as the Lord had said. He buried him in Moab in the valley opposite Beth Peor, but to this day no one knows where the grave is." Did you catch that? It wasn't Michael who buried Moses, it was God. My reason for bringing this up is to remind all of us that anything that exists outside of the Bible needs to be taken with a massive grain of salt. It's not to say that wisdom or history can't be gleaned from other writings, but they lack the final authority that we find in the scriptures. Sorry for the short detour, now let's get to the possible reasons for the fight. The first one on our list focuses on Satan's role as the accuser, like how we see him portrayed in Revelation 12:10. In this version, the devil argued that Moses belonged to him. Why? Because Moses was a sinner. And Satan, like a cosmic prosecutor, loves to claim that sinners deserve death and damnation, which, I guess he's not wrong. In this dispute, the devil brought 2 crimes against Moses: the murder and disappearance of the Egyptian from Exodus 2:11-12, and disobedience when Moses struck a rock instead of speaking to it to produce water. The second one being the reason Moses was barred from the Promised Land. Essentially, Satan was saying, Moses broke God's law, he's mine by right. Now, there may be some who might say that the body doesn't really matter so much as the soul, and in some fashion that's true, but we can't forget passages like Philippians 3:21, which states, "Who by the power that enables him to bring everything under his control will transform our lowly bodies so that they will be like his glorious body." There does seem to be a sense in which the physical is important to God, and while I'm not the biggest fan of this particular rationale for Satan's actions, it does hold some weight when considering the importance of Moses' body. This next one is a slight twist on the legal claim idea. As a recap, Moses had sinned at Meribah with the rock incident, and as a result was barred from entering Canaan during his life. Some suggest Satan interpreted that as Moses being disqualified or rejected. figuring he had a right to the man's body. In this sense, there's this notion of territory. Moses died outside of the promised land in Moab, ergo, God didn't want him, so Satan had first dibs. The devil might have thought, Moses died on my property, his body stays here. Michael's arrival to bury or possibly retrieve the body in this story would have provoked that territorial dispute. I hadn't thought of this before doing this video, but this premise makes Satan sound like a hillbilly yelling at people to get off his land.
Hey, get off my property! Run for it!
The issue is the world doesn't actually belong to the devil. It belongs to God. Could Satan have used this as a rationale for this dispute? Sure, I guess, but it sounds paper thin. I mean, I see Satan being that guy who can sell ice to Eskimos and ketchup popsicles to women in white gloves. So the argument that Moses died on Satan's land falls flat for me. Don't get me wrong, the devil is out of his mind, so he very well could have convinced himself that this was a sound legal case. It just doesn't work for me personally. Now, before we keep going, do me a favor and hit the like button so people know how awesome this video is. Thank you, and let's get back to the video. This next one is big in Jewish tradition, and I would say arguably the best explanation. Moses was Israel's greatest leader, miracle worker, and lawgiver, basically a rock star of faith. If the location of his tomb had been known, people might have turned it into a shrine and even worshipped Moses' remains. And no, I'm not kidding. Remember, these Israelites once worshipped a bronze snake and a golden calf. You can see 2 Kings 18 and Exodus 32. And real quick, I want to take a moment and talk about the bronze snake I just mentioned. Anyone who has read the Book of Numbers is familiar with the story of the Israelites rebelling against God, who promptly unleashed venomous snakes against a sinful people. But he also gives the people a way out by commissioning Moses to build a serpent, and anyone who looks at it lives. That same serpent, that symbol of God's grace, mercy, and renewal, was eventually turned into an idol worshipped by the Jewish people. And like the golden calf, the bronze snake was destroyed by the leader of Israel, and this time, King Hezekiah. With that in mind, the temptation to venerate Moses' grave would be very real. Satan, ever the schemer, would love to hijack Moses' legacy to rob God of glory by turning Moses' burial site into a place of idol worship. The devil could snare the Israelites into breaking the very first commandment. One theory says the devil wanted Moses' body specifically to make it an object of worship among the people. You can see Satan gleefully propping up Moses' body or bones as relics for pilgrimage. I mean, it's a bit morbid, I know, but you get the point. In this view, God sent Michael to secure the body and hide it, thwarting Satan's plot to start the cult of Moses. Michael's mission as divine secret service was to guard the body and keep it out of Satan's hands. The result? No known grave, no idolatrous shrine. Now, sometimes the simplest answer is motive enough. Satan just really, really hated Moses. I will say this explanation is the undercurrent for any possible reasoning for the devil arguing over Moses' body, apart from Satan hating God too. Moses had been a huge problem for the devil's agenda. He delivered Israel from slavery in Egypt, crushing a pagan superpower's pride and gods. He received the 10 Commandments and law, successfully leading his people through a 40-year march, and it's this nation that would bring forth the Messiah. That's a stellar resume from God's perspective, and a nightmare for Old Scratch. One speculation is that Satan wanted Moses' body as a sort of trophy or to desecrate it out of spite. Maybe the devil hoped to parade Moses' body to demoralize the Israelites or just gloat that this servant of God died before reaching his goal. Some have said the devil might have viewed it as payback time for all the damage Moses caused to the kingdom of darkness. In this scenario, the fight wasn't over any legal claim or theological technicality, it was personal. The devil, seething that Moses snatched a whole nation from his grasp, wanted to humiliate Moses even in death. Of course, God was not about to let his friend Moses be disgraced by a child throwing a tantrum, so Michael was sent to ensure Moses received a dignified burial and that Satan couldn't so much as poke the body with a pitchfork. Like I said earlier, this reason is likely lurking behind the others. Whether through legal wrangling or idle schemes, Satan's underlying motive could simply be malice toward one of God's greatest servants. I figured it might be worth mentioning that there is one line of thought that suggests that Satan believed Moses to be one of the 2 witnesses who appear in Revelation, and that Satan wanted to take the body to prevent this from happening. It's a fun thought, but God doesn't need Moses' old body to bring him back to life. I mean, if God can create the universe ex nihilo, then making a new meat suit for a human is child's play. I would say there's something to the ideas of idolatry prevention and spitefulness that I find attractive when looking at this story. One, I can easily see ancient Jews worshiping at the burial site of Moses, especially when you consider the entirety of Jewish history throughout the Old Testament, and, to be fair, even the Christian proclivity to venerate what we call holy sites. The very reason Jews were ultimately conquered and forced into exile was idolatry. They worshipped foreign gods and forsook the law. So the idea of Satan stealing Moses' body to lead Israel off track is totally plausible to me. And when you factor in the idea of Satan not being able to just take the L with dignity and grace, him being a whiny brat and trying to screw with God and his people makes perfect sense. So to put everything in a nice, tidy bow, Satan hated Moses. So he wanted to steal the body and use it against God by forcing Israel into idol worship. Michael is sent to intervene, and we get our commentary from Jude. Voila! This story, strange as it is, gives a behind-the-curtain peek at spiritual warfare. It's both a little funny and profound that the devil would fight over a corpse. It shows how spiteful he is, yet how futile his efforts are against God's power. In a way, Michael and Satan's tussle over Moses' body is a microcosm of the ongoing battle between good and evil, Satan accusing and attempting to corrupt, God protecting and redeeming. Jude's readers would have taken away the lesson, namely to not behave like arrogant false teachers, since even Michael exercised restraint and appealed to God's authority. For us, we may even get a pretty epic narrative out of it, one that reminds us that God takes care of his own. Even in death, Moses was under God's protection, so much so that Satan himself couldn't lay a finger on him. In the end, Michael won by calling on the Lord, and Satan lost the battle over Moses' body. Moses got a secret holy burial, no idolatrous monument, no satanic victory. And as a cherry on top, Moses ultimately made it to the ultimate promised land, heaven, and even stepped foot in the earthly promised land during the Transfiguration in Matthew 17, vindicated and honored by God. It's just really cool that Moses, renewed and exalted, was able to finally make it to the land promised to his forefathers. The devil's plans, whatever they were, backfired spectacularly. But what do you guys think? Is there another reason for this fight? And what other Bible topics do you want to see covered? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. God bless and be excellent to each other.